Oh, good morning, everybody. We actually heard it from the dude himself. And I know for a fact that one of the things that the dude always thought about was if he wasn't doing sort of home automation, what would he like to do? And he always said he would love to study and eventually become a private investigator. And you can tell when he's interviewing Steve Moore how much he admires the investigators. I suppose it's, like all of us, we're all kind of what's the term, armchair quarterbacks, aren't we? We're all trying to look at this case, but we have huge admiration for the likes of Pete Bates. Doing the initial investigation for Dean and Jerry, and then the Kirby fellows that work with Kathleen Zellner. So here is another dude video about Mr. McCrary. So if I click on that and I click on that, click on that one and that one, we should be ready to go. Just move me. You'll notice I'm back in my studio. Obviously did a chat with Kate Judson of CIFS, and she appreciated the fact that I have the Charlie Barron's state flag. I think everybody in Wisconsin relates to Charlie Barron's. Anyway, let's have a listen to the dude. Again, quite an old video. You can tell by the room that he's in. He's not in his TARDIS.
Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Erekose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello everybody, we're here today to talk about one more of Zellner's experts. Today we're going to be talking about Mr. McCrary. Mr. McCrary he's basically a professional investigator. This guy's qualifications are through the roof. Absolutely through the roof. I mean, I'm going to go through it here a bit. Obviously the first clip we're going to show what his credentials are. But his credentials go on and on a bit. They're impressive. Very impressive. So, what's important about Mr. McCrary is he is the guy brought in to look at the investigation, basically the entire investigation, really, and to find problems, things that were not looked into that should have been, and that sort of thing. And that's essentially all that he's entailing here. He's just basically looking at the documents that were given to him, and he read through them. He cites them in his affidavit, of course, and basically it's just pointing out all the stuff, obviously that a lot of us have been saying for a long time. But he also finds the fact that there was some trouble with Teresa and Ryan in the past, and that, along with the fact that he was at her house a lot, only lived about a half a mile away from her, and was unemployed at the time, all of these things, along with the fact that she was doing the risque boudoir photos, that sort of stuff, that put her at a higher risk for to be murdered. That it just did. It put her at a higher risk than a normal average person who didn't have those situations going on. Now, he goes in to talk about where the investigation was. A couple of things he kind of really sticks to is, one thing is he talks about how an investigation should go from a evidence-based investigation, and how and when it should transition to a suspect-based investigation. So what he gets into here is how this particular investigation went way too quickly from being evidence-based to being suspect-based. And he talks about that a bit, and he talks about another thing called victimology. And he talks about it because this is the way he looks at a case. This is the way he teaches people to look at at a case, and wait till you see how many people he teaches. It's amazing. It's quite amazing. Anyways, but this is what he teaches. It's called victimology, where he starts with the victim. He starts with whoever it was that was murdered, and he finds out everything about them first. He finds out everything about their life, who and what and when and how, everything that was around her at the time of the incident. Okay. Or her, or him or her, obviously. The victim could be either male or female, but the point is, in this case, it's a her. So he basically is talking about how that's the best way to go about solving a case, because just like we all know, just like anybody who's ever heard about murder investigations, you always start with the people closest to the victim first. 9 times out of 10, it is somebody that the victim knows or has seen or has had contact with. Whether it's a lot or a little, it doesn't matter. It's always generally so often enough that it's pretty much a rule that you have to look at the immediate people around the victim first, and that's essentially what he's pointing out. That he's just pointing out, he's taking a lot of time to explain it. He's using a lot of investigative, lingo, and obviously citing other investigative, things. He's basically citing the fact that the way that investigations are supposed to be run is you start with the victim and you work outward and checking out everybody around her. So he basically is just pointing that out, that this investigation just went from evidence-based for maybe a day or two, and then suddenly went from that to suspect-based. So that's what we're going to be finding out here. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the first document here, and this is basically where we're going to see his qualifications. So here we go.
People all over the world are shocked, amazed, and a little angry when they discover the simple truth about type 2 diabetes.
I have been professionally involved in violent crime investigations for more than 45 years, including 25 years as an FBI agent. In that capacity, I investigated violent crimes as a field agent for approximately 17 years, and then was promoted and transferred to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, as a supervisory special agent, where I worked in the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crimes. There, I was assigned to the operational wing of the Behavioral Science Unit, where my primary responsibility was to provide expertise in investigative techniques and crime scene analysis in violent crime investigations, both to the FBI agents as well as to any law enforcement agency around the world that requested FBI assistance. My other responsibilities including conducting research into violent and sexually violent crimes and offenders, and providing training to law enforcement agencies nationally and internationally. So this guy's got a lot of, stuff going on. It's very impressive. Let me read off some. We got the New York City Police Department, New York State Police, Texas Rangers, Boston Police Department, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, California Attorney General's Office, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Massachusetts State Police, Kansas City, Missouri Police, where else we got? We got the National Policia in Spain, Budapest Homicide, the Hungarian National Police, the French National Police, Scotland Yard, the Dutch National Police. All right, and it just goes on and on. I mean, the guy's helped out a lot of places. Now, one other thing there that he's done is he was most recently, in October of 2016, was helping the Swedish FBI. He was training the Swedish FBI to how to investigate, what investigative, techniques and all that sort of stuff. It was him. He's the guy that was chosen to be sent over to Sweden, a sovereign nation, from our FBI to train them. So apparently a lot of people have a pretty freaking high opinion of this guy as an investigator. So just saying that, leaving it out there as for whatever you want to say about it. But anyways. So now we're going to move into what I was telling you about with him, and that his main thing when he starts investigating is victimology, study of the victim. So we're going to see this right now. He's going to go ahead and explain it to you in his own words in his affidavit, and then we'll come on back. I hold the following opinions regarding police practices and investigative procedures to a reasonable degree of professional certainty. Every meaningful analysis of violent crime begins with victimology, i.e., a study of the victim or victims. Victimology is the collection and assessment of all significant information as it relates to the victim and his or her lifestyle, personality, employment, education, friends, habits, hobbies, marital status, relationships, dating history, sexuality, reputation, criminal record, history of alcohol or drugs, physical condition, and neighborhood of residence are all pieces of the mosaic that comprises victimology. The bottom line is, who was the victim and what was going on in his or her life at the time of the event? Was the victim having problems? Had the victim recently expressed any fears? Did the victim express any concerns about his or her security? Was the victim in a relationship? Ascertaining the victimology is the key to any successful investigation, which is interesting because she did express to Tom Pierce she did have somebody bothering her and troubling her. So that's interesting. Okay, so I think there we have officially established that he puts a lot of stock in victimology and that studying the victim in a case is really more important than anything else, which I think is pretty much the way everybody's taught investigation. But anyways, he's looking at this case as an investigator with 50 years experience at the highest level that you could, an FBI investigator for 17 years and then moved on to these more, prestigious posts, I guess, or, things that, prestigious jobs or, assignments, it's pretty impressive that he was chosen to help train the Sweden FBI, the Swedish FBI. That's, you're building an FBI, who do you go to? McCrary's your man. A lot of people had to say that for him to end up there. I'm just saying. So now we're going to go into what he's talking about with an investigation, going from a evidence-based investigation to a suspect-based investigation, and how, his criticism in this case as to how quickly that happened. So we're going to go ahead and see what he has to say about that here, and we'll come on back. Moving prematurely from an evidence-driven investigation to a suspect-driven investigation is particularly problematic and a common feature in investigative failures. The attitude becomes, we know who did it, now let's get the evidence that proves it. This type of tunnel vision leads to confirmation bias in searching for and interpreting evidence. Alternate hypotheses are not considered, and alternate suspects not properly investigated. Mrs. Halbach's vehicle was discovered on Mr. Avery's property on November 5th of 2005, and at that point it appears that all investigation into her ex-boyfriend's potential involvement in Miss Halbach's disappearance and death stopped. At that point, it appears that detectives moved from an evidence-based investigation to a suspect-based investigation targeting Mr. Avery. For example, on the morning of November 5th, 2005, shortly after Ms. Halbach's vehicle was found, and 4 days before Mr. Avery's arrest, a Manitowoc County detective was recorded asking if Mr. Avery had been taken into custody yet. This is a strong suggestion that investigators had shifted a suspect-based investigation with Mr. Avery as that suspect. An unimportant point related to this is that well-trained and supervised law enforcement officers should have ensured that Manitowoc County authorities were not involved in this investigation due to an obvious conflict of interest. Mr. Avery had filed a $36 million lawsuit against Manitowoc County, alleging that they had wrongfully convicted him for a rape, for which he had served nearly 18 years in prison. Alright, so now he's going to go back into victimology here. And he's going to explain why Teresa would be at an elevated risk for, violence of this sort. So we're going to go ahead and move into this now, and then we'll come on back.
If you're learning guitar late in life, there's one distinction that will determine if you're going to succeed or fail. And I'm going to
Teresa Halbach, the victim in this case, could be considered to be at an elevated risk for becoming the victim of violence due to her prior abusive relationship with her ex-boyfriend Ryan Hillegas and her business, which involved nude photography and advertised other adult services. affidavit of Tom Pierce attached. She also had an affair with a married man who subsequently got divorced and had a brief sexual relationship with her ex-boyfriend's best friend, with whom she shared a house. She sustained both verbal and physical abuse in her relationship with her ex-boyfriend. At the time of her death, the ex-boyfriend was unemployed, lived close by, and visited her home frequently. The day before her death, the ex-boyfriend was at her house but provided vague statements to authorities as to when and why he was there. I have seen no evidence that he offered an alibi of any sort of any statement regarding his activities. From October 31st of 05 to November 3rd of 05, nor have I seen any evidence that the authorities ever asked him to do so. Mr. Hillegas injected himself into the police investigation by taking an active role in the search party, as we all know. So, my takeaway there is this. The prosecution failed to realize that they had a suspect with motive, opportunity, and all these things. There was a history. And the prosecution didn't see this. Instead went after a suspect, went after him at trial without being able to offer a motive. Okay? Without being able to offer the motive. I mean, if you had somebody who obviously had motive and the ability, the access, probably knew everything about her, and all the things that she did, if he lived that close to her and was unemployed, and if he was the one that was harassing her, that she was talking to Tom Pierce about, but wouldn't fully tell Tom who it was. But if it was him, I mean, that's a lot of pieces fitting together. I mean, that's it. It's no big secret. I've never ever said, oh yes, I'm sure that Ryan's, the one that did it. But I will tell you this: I have never been able to confidently say no. I don't think that I don't think there's a high percentage that he is involved, possibly did it. There's something about him. He's dodgy. The way he's so dodgy on the stand, just the vagueness of his memory. It's funny because in one of my videos recently, I actually, had found this piece of press that showed him saying exactly when he had called Teresa's phone, on November 1st and on November 3rd, I believe it was. So anyways, it had showed, but in court, he could only remember one of them. He could only remember the one on the 3rd, or whatever. But so this piece of press showed that he said he called it on the 1st and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was demonstrating that the voicemail box was full and all that stuff. So anyway, the guy is just dodgy. And that's why he is suspect. It's not a mystery that he is suspect. I'm sorry. Some people are out there saying, "Oh, it's not fair. He's not a suspect. He shouldn't be a suspect." It's like, no, I'm sorry. I mean, that's one thing that everybody thought about him. Most everybody thought about him when they saw him, is that he came off as dishonest. And the whole fact that he came off as purely dishonest, yeah, it's just this is going to forever plague him, because that's the way he came off. And, win, lose, or draw, whatever it is, that's the way he came off. He looked dishonest. He looked like he was basically trying to hide or obscure, things. And, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's no mystery that Ryan Hillegas became a suspect. So, we're going to move into the last clip now, especially when they could offer a motive. Like I said, just wanted to point that out one more time. No motive for Stephen Avery. Would have had one with Ryan. Investigators are gatekeepers for the rest of the criminal justice system. At their best, investigators can protect us from some of society's most dangerous predators. At their worst, they can create and perpetuate egregious injustices. Investigators must keep an open mind about how to interpret data and evidence until they have gathered as many facts as possible. At its inception, an investigation should be multidimensional. No single hypothesis or suspect should be either embraced or eliminated until all pertinent facts and evidence have been collected and thoroughly examined. So, what this highly experienced investigator is telling us, that there's two major mistakes made in this case. that make it question, that make it suspect, and that is the fact that number one, there was not victimology. They did not do victimology, or at least they did not do nearly enough victimology on Teresa. They should have seen and pieced together what he pieced together. He's basically just saying right there, boom, this is a huge miss. Huge. And the fact that he went looking for them, asking Ryan for an alibi. And he said he couldn't even see any appearance that they ever asked him for one. I mean, really. I mean, seriously. So he's pointing it out, just going, look there, right there, big, huge problem. Then on top of that, he talks about the fact that the investigation went from a evidence-based investigation to a basically suspect-based investigation, and it went there way too quickly. They went from the first one to the second one without doing their proper vetting, and that was what he was talking about right there, about not embracing or discarding any suspect until all pertinent data has been collected. And I don't think they did that here. There was definitely a wind in the air of, let's get this lawsuit to go away. Hey, I know the neighboring counties had to have been worried about it too. They didn't want to have to be worried about a bankrupt Manitowoc, who might not be able to pay its bills to them and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, the surrounding counties could have just came in going, oh, okay, the RAV4's there. Okay, fine. Avery did it. Now, I'm not trying to say that they're evil or whatever. No. They just came in. It looked a certain way. There was pressure, let's say from high up, to see things a certain way. And there we go. The ball begins to roll. It just starts rolling downhill from there. So, and that's what he's basically pointing out. And he points it out because the morning that the RAV4 was found, within, an hour or so of the RAV4 being found, and 4 days before Stephen Avery was actually arrested, there is a Manitowoc County officer calling in and asking if Stephen Avery is in custody yet. I mean, yeah, they switched. It shows that they clearly had switched to a suspect-based investigation by that point, by 1 hour after the RAV4 being found on the 3rd. So, I mean, at least, it's hard to dispute, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It would be hard for Manitowoc County to dispute that, because that officer calling in like that, and I mean, he's just so sure of himself, like, yeah, oh, is he in custody yet? Like if it's a foregone conclusion. So, amazing. So that is what Mr. McCrary is pointing out. He's a very seasoned investigator, very experienced. I have no doubt that everything he has said here is 100% on point. When I look at his credentials, I mean, it's pretty impressive. The type of things that this man has done in a 50-year career. And so when he says that this investigation didn't get done properly, I believe him. So that's about it, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see ya.
Well, I think you can agree with me. I think, as we saw there, the dude is very impressed with Mr. McCrary. I'm just going back to his point about Ryan being dodgy, or appearing dodgy. For me, the most important thing is his close friendship with Mike, and that Mike Holbach. I think the pair of them make each other look even dodgier, if that's possible. Anyway, that's the dude's take on Zellner's use of Mr. McCrary, the former FBI profiler, and yeah, Ryan, very dodgy. If he didn't do it himself, he's still got a lot of questions to answer, and as yet has not gotten on board the Zellner's truth train. So anyway, we'll catch you all soon. Bye for now.